If you recall, religious leaders played a pivotal role in curbing not only the spread of Ebola in 2014, but also halting and reversing the spread of HIV/AIDS. So on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, we focus attention on the role of religious bodies in containing the spread of COVID-19 and, of course, related matters. I am Kirian Umayo. Welcome to the program.
My name is Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Kirian to also welcome you to the program. As usual, the program will have its complementary segments other than business. Of course, we're going to have newspaper review and others, but let's begin now with the highlights of the morning news. And here is Musbao Danwahab. Good morning, Musbao.
Very good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. Let me tell you the news. The latest statistics from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, say 10 new cases of COVID-19 have been confirmed. That brings the total number of confirmed cases in Nigeria to 184. 7 of the new cases are in Lagos and 3 in the FCT. Breakdown now has 98 in Lagos, 38 in FCT, 14 in Osun, 8 in Oyo, 5 in Akwa Ibom State, 4 each in Ogun, Edo, and Kaduna State, 3 in Bauchi, 2 each in Enugu and Ekiti, and 1 each in Rivers and Benue States. Meanwhile, the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has announced the discharge of 11 more COVID-19 patients from the mainland hospital, Yaba, bringing the number of discharged patients to 18 since the index case was reported. He confirmed that they have fully recovered and tested negative to the virus and have been allowed to return to their families. In a press release, the governor said the discharged patients include 2 females and 9 males. The governor thanked the frontline health workers who took care of the patients, as well as members of the Lagos State Health Family and the Emergency Operations Center for their resilience and diligence in the face of the daunting challenges confronting the state in curtailing the spread of the pandemic. He, however, warned all the key players in the fight against the virus that time is not ripe for relaxation, urging them to maintain vigilance to protect communities from infections. And as Nigeria sustains effort towards containing the coronavirus pandemic, President Muhammadu Buhari insists that value be retained within the economy, while the poor and the vulnerable remain protected. The president gave an order at a strategic engagement with the Presidential Committee assessing the impact of COVID-19 on the nation's economy.
His directive is make sure salaries are paid, make sure critical infrastructure projects like roads, rails are protected. As much as possible, use local inputs so that we retain value within our economy, and also make sure that you have measures that protect the poor and the vulnerable.
It's not looking as easy as everybody thought it would be. The global economy, not naturally, like we all know at this time, will certainly suffer some very serious growth problems that may even lead to recession globally. So what we want to do is to see what can we do as a country to rescue our own situation so we don't go the direction many will go. It's not going to be easy, but we can only just assure our people that we are on top of it and that we'll resolve it, and Nigerians will still be better for it.
Meanwhile, the Economic Sustainability Committee, headed by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, held its inaugural meeting this Thursday in Abuja. The committee, recently constituted by President Muhammadu Buhari, is looking into how to develop and implement strategies to alleviate sufferings of Nigerians at this time. As part of a coordinated national response strategy to the COVID-19 pandemic, state governments have been mandated to prepare a 300-bed facility to be used for isolation and treatment of COVID-19 patients should there be an upsurge of the pandemic in the country. Chairman of the Presidential Task Force and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, conveyed this presidential directive during Thursday's briefing in Abuja.
Important that states whether in the front line where cases have been reported or where cases have not been reported yet, to intensify the preparation of facilities that will help in the event of a surge.
It's been trending on the social media that the equipment and aid that we receive from China, from Jack Ma, they've all been infected with the virus. This is not true.
In view of the prevailing global shortages of particular commodities like masks and protective gowns and even of ventilators, we are going to have conversations with the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment to look for indigenous producers, indigenous manufacturers.
And First Lady of Nigeria, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, says it is a thing of joy and gratitude to Almighty God to reunite with her daughter after she had been in isolation for 14 days. Immediately, she landed in the country. The First Lady made this known on her Twitter handle. She wishes all those affected by the coronavirus speedy recovery and prayed for an end to this pandemic. Heads of security agencies in the FCT have expressed concern over the attitude of residents in the suburbs to the lockdown directive to curtail the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. This was after the monitoring of the lockdown at Nyanya, Duse and Zuba amongst entry point to the nation's capital.
Weigh the consequences of what you are doing.
Meanwhile, Nigerian security agencies have been enforcing compliance with restrictions imposed by governments at all levels to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the country. Minister of Police Affairs Mohammed Megiri Dingyadi went round Abuja to monitor and assess the process being led by Nigerian police force.
What we have seen, we'll just continue to call on Nigerians to ensure that everybody continues to comply and to, most importantly, ensure that the policemen on the streets are doing the right things that they should be doing.
The Akwa Ibom State Governor, Udom Emmanuel, has ordered a complete cessation of movements in the state for a period of 14 days. The total lockdown, according to Governor Emmanuel, in a state broadcast becomes imperative following a report of COVID-19 confirmed in the state.
There will be no movement of persons except those on essential duties who must carry a proper means of identification on them at all times. All business premises, markets, shops, motor parks, and offices must remain closed during this period. The only exception will be pharmacies and grocery shops. All events of any nature are prohibited during this period. The relevant security agencies have been briefed and they will ensure strict compliance with this directive.
And those are the news highlight for now. Good morning, Nigeria will continue after this break with Kirian and Kingsley. Good morning.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
The main way coronavirus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Before now, no visually impaired have graduated with a first class here. And most times, it's not because they are not that intelligent or hardworking, it's just because they lack basic amenities of studying. Being visually impaired, for every effort a sighted person puts in, you have to put at least double of it.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now it's time for us to take a look at the papers we have this morning.
And you're welcome to Newspaper Review. We'll begin with Leadership newspaper this morning. Below the nameplate, we have airlines to fall back on $61 billion cash reserves. We can get details of that on page 6 of the Leadership newspaper. The lead story this morning on the paper, we have COVID-19. Federal government distributes food, cash to vulnerable Nigerians. It has several riders. PMB approves 70,000 naira tons of grains. 70% infected Nigerians are men, according to the minister. Confirmed cases hit 174. Court finds orders isolation of 2 Egyptians for violating restriction order. Yobe, Kogi, top government officials donate 50% of their salaries. And VSF to commit 1 billion naira, says T.Y. Danjuma. And below that we have the announcement of the demise of Mayor of Jere, Saad Osman, who died at the age of 70. And now at the bottom of the newspaper we have some other striking headlines here. Fuel marketers, short stations protest 123 litre price, which was recently announced. That's on page 7. World Autism Day. Stakeholders decry discriminating against victims. The story can be found on page 8. Now, military neutralizes bandits in Niger State. You get that on page 9. Reps, ministers, CBN meet over poor power supply. The story is captured in details on page 34. Now, COVID-19, Esunupe urges prayers as Niger government votes 300 million naira for palliatives. It's on page 9. That's all.
All right, Kieran, let's take a look also at the front page of the Nation newspaper. Most of the stories on the front page and illustrations on COVID-19. So we'll just start from above the nameplate. How we battled virus by China. Backs Nigeria's fight, details on page 17. Minister to varsities restart session through virtual teaching. As the Minister of Education, with details on page 28. I'm getting better, says Atiku's son, and pray for health workers, according to him, with details on page 5. Now, below the nameplate, you have 2 headlines. Troops launch offensive against insurgents. That's page 27. Oyetola, that's the governor of Osun State, signs bill on COVID-19, with details on page 27. Late story, COVID-19, 11 patients out of hospital as cases rise to 190 in Nigeria. They're beginning to have all these conflicting figures. You read 174 from leadership, but that story, of course, that is slightly outdated now. The nation is reporting 190, and our bulletin, of course, it's 184 according to the NCDC. 6 more returnees positive in Osun, and Buhari's daughter out of isolation. And you can see the photograph there of the First Lady and her daughter after the daughter ended her self-quarantine upon her return from the United Kingdom. Now, more cases likely, say Minister and NCDC. NCDC and the Minister said more cases are likely. A medical officer taking samples from Benue Governor Samuel Otom in Makurdi. And then right at the foot of the front page says Adeyemi Melaye, that's their legal battle over the senatorial election. Coronavirus may disrupt tribunal sitting, page 6. Soldier shoots man dead, page 4. That was in Warri, Delta State. Now, once again, you can see the illustration of the Nation newspaper. It's a sidebar. It says COVID-19 global cases, that's well over 1 million now. Johns Hopkins is reporting some 1,050,000 cases, but the paper is saying 1,005,000. Deaths now over 51,000, and those who have recovered over 210,000. The United States, of course, continues to lead the rest of the world in terms of reported positive cases with 238,000, closely followed by Italy at 115,000 and Spain 110. But in terms of fatalities, Italy has nearly 14,000 and Spain just about 10,000. And of course, China, where it first broke out in December last year, still stands as 3,318 according to the paper. Now, there are other stories inside the pages of the Nation newspaper, but just to indicate that the number of active cases the Nation is reporting here now in Nigeria are 168. Those who have recovered are 20. Governors, that state governors, suspend loans repayment. Lagos seals off mosque, and Oni engages Oro deity for virus. Ganduje, Obiano, and Fayoshe negative. Dangote builds isolation center. Otom and his deputy samples taken. 399 French nationals leave Nigeria. IG cautions officers on rights. MTN backs virus fight with 1.4 billion naira. And task force has no access to funds. Oil price climbs to $29 per barrel. You have details, of course, inside the paper.
Yeah, I'm really concerned, Kingsley, about the rate of recovery in Nigeria. It may not be commensurate with the new confirmed cases, but then the good news is that many of the patients are responding to treatment, and whatever medical therapy that is being administered on them is actually positive. For instance, Atiku's son, took a bold step, to talk to the public right from his isolation area, and was able to communicate, to Nigerians on the true situation. He called it a first-hand information, on coronavirus and the battle that is on. As you rightly pointed out, he commended the medical workers for their gallantry, in ensuring that they recover. He also mentioned the fact that they come so close to patients, and that tells you the amount of risk involved here by those on the front line. The risk is obvious because you have to test your patient, treat him or her. That means you have to be close. Distancing is not going to work there if you have to, do your job well, in terms of giving the true treatment. And he also said that Nigerians should be aware of fake news because it also helps to send the wrong signals, to Nigerians. Some may be thinking that coronavirus is a death sentence. It is not. It is being fought, aggressively by all governments across the world. And Nigerian situation, it is working at the moment.
Well, yeah, no doubt about that, Kirian. The good news is that those who were taken in for treatment, at least we have 20 of them now who have been discharged. But that is not to say that the rest of the population should say, look, even if a person comes down with coronavirus, the person can go for treatment and the person will be discharged. The risk is if you have widespread infection throughout the population, then you overwhelm the medical facilities.
Exactly.
And then those who are providing the care, that's to say the doctors and nurses and their support staff, and so you will not have enough bed space, which is what most of the advanced countries are suffering now. In the United States, that is New York State, for instance, New Jersey, but now in Louisiana. And then, of course, you come to Italy and Spain. That's part of the ordeal that they are suffering because the facilities are overwhelmed, which is why the government, has taken the proactive steps of saying, look, how do we contain it, before it explodes? But the officials have also indicated that, look, that's NCDC and the Minister of Health, that we are likely to see a rise in the number of cases because the tracing is still ongoing, and unfortunately, some persons didn't quite behave well according to the rules to say, look, if you just came from abroad, instead of you gallivanting the streets, isolate yourself or self-quarantine, so that you don't infect other people.
Exactly.
As the last time, if you recall, Kyria, they said they were tracking some 5,000 or 6,000, but I understand now they have been able to trace well over 3,500. So where are the others? And the purpose, I think we were discussing this just before we came on. The purpose of a lockdown is not for you to be on holidays. The purpose of a lockdown is to ensure that community transmission is contained. And you still find in Abuja yesterday and this morning, what Nigerians refer to as kabu. That's to say that informal or registered taxi cabs are all over the place.
Yes.
And they are operating,
but it is quite dangerous. It's quite dangerous, because I like to identify with the message to the governors of different states of Nigeria in this respect, that they should get prepared for an upsurge. Nobody's wishing that, on Nigeria as a nation, but from what is going on, the trajectory is pointing to the fact that there could be increases. If you are looking for 5,000 people and we have 3,000, what about the rest of the 2,000? And what are they doing wherever they are at the moment? Right. They are still, relating to people, their family members, and even friends, without knowing that they have anything, because some of them could be could not have the symptoms, and it is more dangerous when you don't have a symptom and you are passing the virus to your friends, So it's very dangerous. And like you said, Kingsley, many Nigerians didn't behave well when they returned to Nigeria. They knew about the virus wherever they are coming from, and they know the importance of self-quarantine, at least to save your loved ones, from getting the virus from you. That is, if you have it, right? Those who are coming out now, some of them returned to Nigeria about a week ago. Right, and they failed to submit themselves, for test, and that is why we are getting rise in numbers of people who are affected on a daily basis. Yeah,
and then that's why the example of President Muhammadu Buhari's daughter, you see the photograph again on the front page of the Nation. That's why her behavior or conduct is exemplary. Yes. As soon as she returned, she went into self-quarantine for the 14-day period, and out of that 14-day period, it has emerged that she's negative, and so there's no sign, no symptoms that ordinarily, will clinically develop because of that self-quarantine. So she's out of it. So what was the difficulty? I remember we mentioned on the program sometime last week, it had to take the security agencies to arrest, some individual in Delta State who had come, and then when the epidemiologist went to the person's village or town, he was sounding off that nobody can stop him, XYZ. It is that kind of irresponsible behavior that can really be a serious strain on the system. But let us remember that coronavirus remains a killer. If adequate care is not taken, and if people have the symptoms and they are unable to, access medical care. I mean, when we look at the fatality figures that are climbing in the U.S. or elsewhere in the world, you see this. In the U.S., you have prominent persons who have died. The Marsalis, one of the famous father of jazz musicians, Wynton and others, is succumbed. Of course, he had an underlying cause, but he succumbed.
And even in Africa here, Manu Dibango, the well-known African Afrobeat star, also succumbed to the virus.
Unfortunately, and just yesterday, I haven't found the story, the pages of the paper that I have this morning. There was bad news also coming from the United Kingdom. A former Director General of the Nigerian Law School, Dr. Kole Abayomi, was said to have passed away. He would have been 80 years old in August this year. Dr. Kole Abayomi, for those, he trained a generation of lawyers at the Nigerian Law School, where he taught, excitingly, law of legal drafting and conveyancing. So may his soul rest in peace, and indeed for all of us who have passed on. But the key message, Kirian, always is that people should take the requisite precaution, the personal hygiene, and the event of any symptoms manifesting. I was very happy. I don't know how it came about. NCDC is now also sending text messages. Yes, sending text messages so that in case you observe symptoms, call NCDC on the following numbers. That way, it will reduce the risk of persons trying to take advantage of you, or say, look, call a number or go to a particular website and so on and so forth.
So we need to commend this Nigerian NCDC. They have been so aggressive in this fight right from the beginning. You recall that the Director General of NCDC was also one of the notable doctors selected by WHO to travel to China to do some analysis of coronavirus at the very beginning. Of course, he returned, quarantined himself for 14 days, and he's still he's out working. I like the template that are putting out, ensuring that people are communicated for us to have a better information of what is happening. Most of the things we read on all these social media cannot be true. Many of them are not true. As the Minister of Information did tell us a short while ago during the news, that some persons are saying that the equipment, brought in by the Chinese philanthropists, that they are infected by coronavirus, but that's not true. That's not true. I saw one person on the social media speaking emphatically on that matter, that his sister sent him a message on this, and he's happy on it as if it is true. These things are not true. If you want to get the true position of this development, you get it from the NCDC, of course, the Information Ministry, as well as, of course, the media houses, like NTA and other media houses.
And now the Presidential Task Force.
Exactly. Don't rely on those information.
And let's face it. I mean, what is the logic in that claim? Now, for how long can the virus survive on any surface?
Exactly.
That's one of the first simple questions, to ask. For how long can it survive? It was transported, over long distances, and the facilities arrived in Addis Ababa, from where they were now transshipped, to Nigeria. So these are some of the things that people should try and avoid. And once again, just to advise us, Kirian, look, the president in his broadcast on Sunday said the lockdown affecting Lagos, Ogun, and the Federal Capital Territory will be for 14 days in the first instance. And if we do not behave ourselves and people are moving about in breach of the lockdown, and there is a rise in the number of positive cases in these locations, then the lockdown will be extended.
All right. Well, at this point, we have to take a short break. We are done with the newspaper review for today. Everything is centering on coronavirus. So we'll have to take a short break. When we get back, we shall, of course, move into the nitty-gritty of our conversation this morning, which, of course, is on the role of religious bodies in advocacy with concern to coronavirus. Do stay with us.
Coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person, who affects two persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the two persons have affected four, and it keeps spreading. You You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
I had invited the boss for lunch.
Okay.
Then I get called to handle some emergency. Then my plan B, the caterer, gets hopelessly stuck somewhere.
What?
Then I call hubby, and he says,
What are we going to do?
Relax, we got this.
No, we don't.
Now it's up to me and him to save the day.
You okay?
With help from something special, the new Ninja pot seasoning from Maggi, specially made from natural stockfish, smoked fish, crayfish, and other ingredients to give your soups and pottages that Nigerian bottom pot taste.
You need to tell me how you got that bottom pot taste.
And then later she says,
Come see me Monday morning. Let's talk about the new branch we're opening.
Just then my plan B shows up. And just when I thought the drama was over.
My sister, let's go to do this.
Delicious bottom pot, yeah.
I know they done myself, oh. I'm the life of the party, so make you be my guest, oh. Why you the stress, why you the worry? I late, oh yeah. You got everything you need.
You can choose to do this with your stew, but not your data. Get more out of life with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# today. Data is life.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
We thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. And now, to set the mood for our conversation this morning, let's get this report from our correspondent, Oyeme Ajayi.
Before the first case of coronavirus was reported in Nigeria, there had been warnings and awareness about what the virus is all about and the best way of prevention and containment. But as it was then, many doubted the reality until the first case was recorded in the country. With the rise of cases from 1 to over 100, some still believe coronavirus is a myth. Even as Nigerians are taking some necessary precautions, they still call it the sickness of the rich. As part of efforts towards curbing the spread, federal and state governments have enforced a restriction of movement of varying degrees, with limitations on gatherings, particularly at worship centers. Sadly, many religious leaders flouted the order, with some insisting that it's a virus for the sinners. This has been a thought-provoking situation, questioning the roles of religious leaders in the fight against the pandemic, especially with observance of social distancing and personal and environmental hygiene. For instance, the national headquarters of Jamaatul Nasrul Islam, under the leadership of His Eminence Sultan of Sokoto, Muhammad Sa'ad Abubakar, has expressed concern over the unfortunate attitude of some preachers in misleading the people over the coronavirus pandemic. Many have questioned how religious leaders are fared so far in creating more awareness against the virus rather than being engulfed with what they tend to lose during the gathering. Also, during this challenging period, many are asking religious bodies to take the lead in actions such as giving of relief materials to members, as well as supporting the federal government in the fight which some leaders are already doing. So, what exactly is the role of religious leaders in the fight against COVID-19? What is expected from religious leaders at this critical point in time? at this critical point in Nigeria's history? Guest on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be answering these questions shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background. Of course, we're expanding it just beyond the religious leaders. We're indeed talking about the leaders and their members, that's to say congregation. And we have with us guests in the studio as well as Network Center and also via Skype. First, let's welcome the Reverend Dr. Israel Akanji, who is Chairman, Christian Association of Nigeria, North Central Zone. Is the senior pastor of the First Baptist Church in Area 11 here in Abuja. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Also here in the studios, would like to welcome Imam Fuad Adeyemi, who is National Chief Imam of Al-Habibiyah Islamic Society. Pleasure to have you with us again on the program.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Okay.
And still joining us in Abuja, but via Skype, is Sheikh Mohammed Nora Khalid, Chief Imam, Apo Legislative Quarters, Jumat Mosque. Thanks for being here this morning for the program. All right, we're not going to have any issue with your audio there. Thank you again for coming. Now, joining us via Skype as well from Abuja is Venerable Ludare Otoki, Basilica of Grace, Gudu Apo, here in Abuja. It's good to welcome you to this edition of the program.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for having me. God bless you.
We also have Professor Omar Pate, Professor of Mass Communication and Dean, Postgraduate School, Bayero University, Kano. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Korean, and good morning, Nigeria.
All right. Once again, gentlemen, delighted to have you with us on this conversation, focusing one more time on the role of faith-based organizations in advocacy on the heels of the coronavirus pandemic. I mean, it is quite obvious to all now that the coronavirus pandemic, which has since made a landfall in Nigeria, represents challenges as well as opportunities. From the perspective of faith-based organizations, what does this mean? Let's begin with the Reverend Akanji.
Yeah, thank you very much. In the church, we also have received this news and this phenomenon that is quite negative, with great shock, like everybody received it. And of course, you will know that the information about the pandemic was unfolding gradually. It didn't all come at once. So at some point, we were made to know that we should reduce the number of people gathering. There should be social distancing of the people. And so it appeared as if, even when we met with the administration, our FCT minister, and it was like, you have to go and reduce the number of people. So we were coping with doing that and explaining to people that for one church gathering, we can only have so number. So we reduced it, and instead of having one church gathering, in some places 6, in some places 7, thinking that when people come and go, we will be able to maintain the gathering. But just a few days after, we were told again that the situation has changed. Gathering of people should stop completely. At that time, movement had not totally stopped. So we had to shut down the places of worship completely. Of course, we heard of a few places where they didn't shut down immediately, but we kept now passing our information through the various structures we have. From the zone, passing information to these various states and telling the states to pass information to the local governments, and talking from church to church, denomination to denomination, telling people total shutdown, no coming together, let people stay in their homes and worship. And so the benefit of technology, again, if you are in your home, a pastor can be in his room and from his room, he can even speak to you and give you additional information. And so we have church groups on platforms from where you can even do Bible study, everybody on his own, making contributions and even praying together, but people on their own. So that we have done. Originally, we tried by bringing, washing machine, making arrangements for people to wash their hands, use hand sanitizers, all of these things. The church spent so much money to get them ready. However, when the complete shutdown of place of worship came, all of those things have just been abandoned there and everybody's gone. So most church premises are completely empty. The only other thing that the church has been doing now is how to help people who may not be able to assist themselves. So this is part of it. Giving relief materials, food and things. That's part of what we are doing.
All right, Reverend Israel, I'm going to thank you indeed. Let me come to you, Imam Adem. There's no doubt that coronavirus is taking its toll on worship centers, and even Saudi Arabia, which is the epicenter of Islamic worship globally, shut down a long time ago. With respect to the first question, which of course all of you should take, how are you reacting to this? What does it mean to you in the present circumstance?
Well, naturally, when things like this come, you feel disturbed, perhaps because of lack of enough information when it was just coming. I remember when Saudi initially just shut down that nobody should enter Haram, that is the two holy mosques, at a particular time. That's about 4 weeks ago. In one of our group, it actually turned to a real crisis. Some people say, why should Saudi Arabia close that they are dancing to the drums of their leaders who are actually doing something? Some of us, or some people among us, say, no, this is a world challenge. That we have not gotten it here does not mean what Saudi did was wrong. It is actually very proactive, because if one person should have it inside Haram, that is that grand mosque, it means the entire Islamic world has gotten it, and only God knows those who can survive, if I thought there will be any survivor. So for what they have done, but because probably many of us do not have enough information or enough learning about certain things that has happened. Some people feel this is the first time they are closing Haram. This is the first time they are closing Kaaba. I said, no, this is not the first time. This is not even the 20th time that they are closing Kaaba, because of so many things that involves life. And in the essence of religion, the number one thing after God himself is life. So anything that anybody will do that will sustain, maintain, and promote life, it is the next thing after God. So whatever that it will in life to promote good living, it is religion. But coming back home now, when this thing came, many people find it difficult to believe that we will close the mosque. When the government said, even before the government said we should close, I remember in our own place, when we were suspecting that this thing was coming to Nigeria, somebody among, I think our chairman or something, who insisted that anybody who wants to enter the mosque, because naturally you have to wash your hand before you enter them. So the issue of washing is not much a problem with us. So all what we needed to do was just to add some chemicals with that washing. So we now added that anybody who wants to, after you perform your ablution, before you now enter the gate of the mosque, you must sanitize your hand. And that is how it started. I will tell you something that will make you laugh. We gave some people some hand sanitizer. They thought it's perfume. They were using it to rub their body. So, and that is why we know we have a problem. That was the time I know there is a challenge. When they told me this is what is happening, I said, then we have to start something. So we have to start using the microphone to say that this is the essence of this. There is a crisis.
They want to sanitize their face, because face is the contact point of coronavirus.
No. This one, they thought it's a perfume. It's a turari, something that you just use, it gives you good smell. This thing is not a laughing matter. Believe me.
But you said it was going to make us laugh.
Honestly, it looks as if it is, but we saw it that this is a great challenge, to the level that people actually, they are not aware of what is going on. So we have to start again. That this is what is happening, this is what is happening. Then the following Friday, we have to shut down the mosque. Even before the government said we should close the mosque, we closed it by ourselves so that you'll be able to listen to us. And alhamdulillah, it worked.
All right. Thank you very much, Imam Fuad Adeyemi. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Now, we have two Skype connections. Let's bring in Venerable Oludare Otoki, who is the Vicar of the Basilica of Grace at Gudu here in Abuja. Venerable Otoki, let's get your own perspective. I mean, you have a science background, but from the basis of the faith-based institutions, what have been the challenges and the opportunities in this pandemic?
Thank you very much, sir. Firstly, as religious leaders, Christians, Muslims, whatever religion it is, our duty to our members is the first. Our duty to our members can be categorized spiritual, social, physical, psychological, and so on and so forth. Spiritually, we need to pray more for our members and to also assure them of God's protection, let them know what is the truth about COVID-19. Some people may believe that it's not real. It's real. But at the same time, we also assure them of God's protection. We also have social responsibility. We have physical responsibility, like letting them know that this is what they need to do, and we will providing facilities in the church for washing hands and also sanitizer. And we also know that at this time, I'm coming to the psychological area now, it's very, very difficult for man who has been living in a community to now say, go into your house, shut down completely. Go into your house, don't go out. It's very difficult naturally. But we need to let them know that it is necessary at this time because the cost is not as much as the benefit. Because in anything we do, we talk of the cost-benefit ratio. It will cost so much to stay at home, but the benefits are enormous. It is when you have life that you talk of business. When you have life, you are talk of work. So, in as much as we are praying and we assure them of God's protection and that God is in control, we also let them know that we need to obey the government. See, on psychological areas, to let them know that the leaders of the nation, the leaders of the church, we have their good and bad. When they say they should stay at home, it's not to punish anybody, but to make sure that we do the necessary things for us to be able to control this pandemic. Thank you.
Well, it's indeed clear, Kingsley, that the social media played a very negative role in this direction since the incipient of this coronavirus in Nigeria, passing information that are not the true position of things, and that tend to confuse some people. Some say, look, coronavirus is not my portion. You know, I have to pray over it. Yes, indeed, it's good to pray, as he rightly pointed out. But then the point is that you have to pray and take precautionary measures as well, because God will save you when you try to help yourself. All right, let's go to Muhammad Nura Khalid, Chief Imam, Apo Legislative Quarters, Jumat Mosque. Imam, we had the initial reaction of worshippers, you know, when the government first of all called for the closure of worship centers. That happened in Katsina State. It was so disturbing, and we're happy it didn't happen again after that first, disturbing reaction of worshippers. Now, what are you telling your worshippers? Are they convinced on the coronavirus pandemic, and of course taking measures which have been put in place by various governments?
Well, first of all, we have to appreciate the effort of our authorities in containing coronavirus, and to put our own quota, or to contribute our own quota. We have been telling people what initially is coronavirus and what are the causes of its spread and what are the dangers. And by extension, we must explain to them the beauty of Islam about life. In Islam, you are not only to protect your own life, but also to protect other people's life. And if you kill yourself intentionally or by negligence, then you are going to be asked by the Almighty, why did you destroy something that He has entrusted in you? There are many verses of the Quran that are talking about that. And people don't understand that social distancing is very important in fighting coronavirus. And that is why we had a difficult task, and we are still having with people that some scholars have told them that this is a plot against Islam to stop the Hajj exercise as a pillar of Islam and to stop the Muslims from gathering to pray. If we have a problem, we must therefore gather and pray instead of separating ourselves. So we have been telling people that the essence is to stop the spread, because when we gather in one place, that is where the problem will escalate. And we have been giving people an example of what China have done, what China has done to fight the pandemic by restricting movement in Wuhan, and that was what helped them in controlling it. So if we can't do that, we are in trouble, because we have an example of America as a very well-established state, but their facilities have been overwhelmed because of the spread of the virus. So if it is in Nigeria, what will happen? So that is what we have been telling people, trying to make them understand their duty as citizens. They must cooperate with the government, because it is a matter of securing life, which is one of the fundamentals of any religion, particularly Islam.
All right. Thank you very much, Sheikh Mohammed. I mean, of course, I'm sure that people would have picked it up in the news already that Mecca and Medina have also been on lockdown. You had a curfew, in parts of the two holy cities, or they had the 24-hour lockdown imposed by the Saudi authorities, all on account of the COVID-19. Well, let's go over to our Kano Network Center, where Professor Umaru Pate was earlier introduced. He's a professor of mass communication and a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. Professor Umaru Pate, I mean, Nigeria got into the COVID-19 battle in February. And ever since, I mean, we have seen a rush of measures by the various authorities, by individuals, and so on and so forth. But in terms of advocacy, and against the background of the backlash from the lockdown in some locations, Kaduna, for instance, Katsina, and even here in the Federal Capital Territory, where some places of worship were defiant of the regulation not to have access not to provide access, to worshippers or indeed to conduct ceremonies. The faith-based organizations get into the loop as quickly as possible, or they are playing catch-up now?
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigeria, once again. Well, this is the period that we expect complete leadership from every sector in the society, as demonstrated by the government and, of course, our very senior religious leaders. This is not a period where we should be debating whether coronavirus is in Nigeria or not, or to align ourselves to some of the conspiratorial thinking about the supposed theory that the disease was introduced deliberately in order to destroy religion or to destroy certain categories of people. This is not the issue. The issue is we are confronted with a very debilitating and a very fatalistic disease that kills in no time, and not only just killing in no time, but it spreads so fast that everyone who is not likely to get in contact with somebody that is a carrier, he stands a very high risk of also contracting the disease. Not only that, we have also seen evidences from other parts of the world, like in Asia, or particularly what happened in China, then the European continent, and now in the US, the way people are dying. Perhaps we are relatively lucky in Africa that the disease has not so far consumed many of us, but it's so worrying that sometimes at the beginning of the lockdown, how some of our faith-based organizations, and particularly some of the leaders, reacted. And you could also see how perhaps some of them were misled by the content being spread on our social media. And this is indicative of how some of the aspects in our national lives are misunderstood. One thing I may perhaps think is some of the religious-based leaders perhaps were not brought into maybe the cycle of getting them to have a personal kind of discussions with some of our leaders. You know that if somebody is talking to you on radio or TV or newspaper, you may think that he may not necessarily be referring to you directly. But by the time you are brought to a particular cycle or to a particular setting through some of these committees that have been set up by government, and you are directly addressed and things are perhaps explained to you, then it may become, or it may sink deeper into you. I suspect that might have been what happened. And of course, naturally, you cannot expect unanimity in everything. Even during the time of the Prophet, we didn't have complete unanimity on issues. But, well, like I've said, this is where we expect to see leadership that will help to secure lives, leadership that will help to sustain life. No matter how religious one may be, if all your followers are contracting or have contracted the disease, at the end of the day, whom are you going to lead? Whom are you going to administer your religious preachings and all of that? So, for example, in Islam, it is very, very clear. Our religious leaders have explained to us the verses and like they say in Hausa, the hujjas that will justify the steps that have been taken by government. And I think governments have responsibilities to go together with these religious leaders and ensure that right things are done. At the end of the day, Nigeria must remain secured. And for us to secure ourselves, our people must be alive. Not only that, we could also see the visible impact of this virus on our economy, which is also impacting on the lives of our people. So I think we need to do more, and we are doing so. For example, in Kano here, if you are in Kano and you listen to our media organizations, almost all our local radio and TV stations are busy conveying messages day in, day out, in Hausa, in English, trying to address the minds of our people. And luckily, our religious leaders have also keyed into these messages. And today, I think we are seeing very, very visible improvement in the behavior of our people in understanding as well as appreciating and performing things according to the right ways.
All right. When we get back to you, you will actually try and do an analysis of the role of the media since the pandemic hit Nigeria. That will be as we make progress in this conversation. Presently, let's get back to Abuja. And one of the points you raised, Kingsley, is the fact that religious leaders perhaps were not invited at a forum, to give them kind of a direct information on what is happening. But then, what is the role of the media? It has always been there, from the beginning, from December. We've had this story on coronavirus in China and the gradual spreading of that virus. And again,
Kira, but that's what Professor Omaro Pate said, that media messages targeted, say, at religious leaders would appear to be generalized messages.
But whereas, if you had them at a round table, then those would be specific messages. It's like, a preacher who is preaching in a church. I mean, from the pulpit, you have the message that is to the entire congregation, and out of that general message, you can also then have a specific message to yourself.
Exactly. But we have all relied on media all our lives, especially with social media. And we have well-educated religious leaders in this country. The big-time churches and big-time mosques are led by learned men. And when you talk about learned men, you have basic understanding of life and what's happening around you in the side. So you need to know about it. Now, even the Papal Enclave, that's St. Peter's Basilica, the biggest Catholic church in Vatican City, where Pope, presides, was shut down. It was shut down a long time ago.
So Kira, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in now. The question, therefore, would be, okay, as part of saying, look, did we respond early enough when we saw that fires were already raging elsewhere around?
And that's what I want Reverend Israel Konji to address. Because of course some leaders were arrested sometime last week. Yeah. Those who were defiant.
Thank you very much. You all know that the storyline, the way the issue of the pandemic came, it didn't all come with total information at the same time. Even the decisions of government, they were taken differently. One state is saying this, another state is saying this. When one state was saying 50, another state was saying 20 people could meet and things like that. There was no consensus as to what should be done nationally. And we do really sympathize with our leaders because they themselves were facing a very strange situation. Everybody was facing a very strange situation. Now, like it was said, if probably the religious leaders were brought together early enough and told that this and this and this are the things you should do, it might have been effected a little earlier. Everybody kept waiting. Okay, let's wait for what our own state will say, what our governor will say. For us in the FCT, what is the minister saying to us? Eventually, the minister brought together the religious leaders, the Christians and the Muslims. Probably, if there had been an earlier coming together, the compliance might have been a little earlier. But at the time the minister brought the people together, of course, he couldn't have called all pastors, all imams. Mm-hmm. There wouldn't be space. In fact, to do that will be against what you are saying again, because you will be gathering people. So we have so many pastors, so many imams, but the leaders were called. And when they got the information, they were to disseminate it. And from our own Christian Association of Nigeria, our national president, His Eminence, Dr. Samson Ayokunle, he immediately sent news everywhere and said church services should close down. Everybody should stop. So it probably would have been effected much earlier, but the circumstances dictated the way things went. Anyway, as for people now who now went and were having services, what they have done has been condemnable, because even as Christians, we all have condemned people gathering, because the Bible itself says that we should be subject to the authorities. We are to even pray for the authorities and follow that which the authorities are teaching us. We are supposed to be subject. Jesus even taught, give unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, unto God what belongs to God. So Caesar represents government. If government is speaking in a particular way, you are supposed to respect that. So we have condemned those who have done that, and we are telling people not to do that. Two key things I want to just say that is the message of the church right now, is that in the pandemic as it is, you should pray as if all depends on God. Trust God, pray and pray and pray as if all depends on God, because this is something we cannot explain. It's far beyond us. And then work as if all depends on you. And the work is this issue of sanitation, social distancing, stay at home, all the things we have been told, being careful. So work at it as if all depends on you. Use the time again to pray as if all depends on God. If you do your part, definitely God will do his part, because we still believe as religious leaders that it is still God that will help us out of this. Whatever the scientists know
we believe that they have come to that knowledge because God revealed it to them. Yeah. And we are praying for scientists, we are praying for doctors, because there are doctors, there are nurses, they are members of our communities. Doctors and nurses are in the churches, they are in the mosques. They need our prayers now, because even if we shut down, they must go and be involved. We have policemen, we have a lot of law enforcement people, they are all outside, and they are also at risk. So we are asking God to protect those people, just as he protects those of us who are at home. So it's a thing that we need all of God, but we need all of our own effort combined, and we are trusting that help is nearby. Very soon, God will bring help.
Imam Fuad.
Yes, there's one thing that has been disturbing me is because we're overrating the impact of the media. I'm sorry. We are and that's why we are getting it wrong. Yes, the media is very, very impactful, the social media, the normal media, but we are overrating their impact. And for you to know this, go to the suburbs, even within the FCT. It is then you will realize that we are overrating the impact of the media. I think what we do...
Are you a media scholar? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I like that.
Professor Mauro Pato will respond to that, but anyhow, but continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's a very good one, but I won't answer it now. You will leave it to the one who will answer it. You see, the issue here is this. There are many things that we are supposed to have involved the people in the grassroots. There is a lack of information, lack of enough information in those areas, and it is the result of what we are seeing today. Many people, you think they know, believe me, they don't know anything about this thing. Yes, the government has been involving the religious leaders mainly in the center. Let me use that word. I think what we need to do, even religious leaders, apart from this letter about this thing, that's supposed to be personalized information, like you rightly said, that 2-3 people in a particular area, we should go there to address them. That you have come for this, you have come for that. And I've seen that during this, the FCT minister, I've supported the Muslim and the Christian. During this, that allowed me to actually see in practical terms that we actually need to engage these people. Not just that everybody must be there. 2-3 people that in a particular locality, when they are there, you inform them, they continue to inform others. When they see that, hey, they have come from FCT, they have come from the minister, from the governor, he has said this to us, they take it more personal than whatever they hear on television, than whatever they hear on social media or elsewhere. Then besides, it's true, the social media has actually tried. I read something in our mosque yesterday, which I was even shocked. The women, they said, we need to pray for our country. I've been following it up in the group, but I didn't understand what was meant by that. So they decided that they want to recite Quran between so time and so time. I was waiting, I was actually monitoring what they want to do. I was shocked when somebody said, I will read from page so page to so page. Others I will read from so page to so page. In 1 hour, they finished reading the Quran. And when they are finishing, they said, I've just finished. If your own remain, let us know. So I was shocked. So what I'm trying to say is that despite the fact that the media has not been enough, but we also use it to make things better. Like what Reverend Bishop said, I don't know whether I'm correct or... I know he's Reverend, but I know he must have got... So we actually also use the media to pray to God that, God, we are challenged. And we do not have any other place to go beside you. And we know that when we all come to God, we should understand one thing. The sciences, the government, they are the one who knows what is happening, what we need to do. But religious leaders are actually the one who knows why they are happening. And that is why the two are actually important.
Yeah, I'm saying what Imam is saying, part of my takeaway from his comment is that, okay, the public enlightenment with respect to COVID-19 should have incorporated evangelical outreach, as it were, to cascade the messages down to if you like, deprived neighborhoods or deprived areas where people don't have necessary media access. Exactly. That's correct?
Yes. And that's why I talked about the leaders of the churches are well learned. They are well placed to understand the events around us and to be able to convey that using whatever medium. If you're going to use social media, or if you want to use some societies in your congregation to send down the message. Because I saw that some local government chairmen, some members of state houses of assembly have been going to their constituents or constituencies to deliver the message directly to the people, which is one component of it. Right. Okay, come.
But please, I agree with you. I think we have to understand ourselves. This is Nigeria. The only language we understand is spiritual. I'm sorry to say. We can't deceive ourselves.
Some people understand the language of money now.
You're quite, and again, Imam, and again, we also have attitude.
Definitely.
It doesn't matter. It will not affect me. It's not my portion. And stuff like that. And it will take you time to convince an average Nigerian person who is spiritual, as you pointed out, to believe in the reality, even in science. But then we believe that God is doing science as well.
Yeah.
So why is it difficult for people to understand and believe? And that's why I want to go to Venerable Oludere Otoki, of course, the vicar of Basilica of Grace Gudu, Aboya in Abuja. Why is it so difficult for Nigerians to imbibe the culture of believing in realities and not in frivolous information that they get from unconfirmed sources via social media? What would the church do to reverse that trend in the Nigerian society? We had the experience of Ebola, and we responded positively. That's why what Reverend Israel Akonji said did not sync well with me, because we had the experience of Ebola. So we can't say this is the first time we're having virus. Right, and all of a sudden, some persons will say, no, this is not it, this is not real. But we had Ebola, and it was real, and it killed. Although Nigeria did not, experience that.
Thank you very much. If I understand your question very well, you are asking why is it difficult for people to understand the situation now, and that we have a situation like that before. First of all, we must realize that majority of Nigerians are illiterate. We must understand that. Two, we must also know that the populace of the country now and some other areas of life, when it comes to religion, they think that science is against religion and religion is against science. And then you must also appreciate the fact that for a long time we have been having fake news on the social media. So it's very difficult for people today to trust even the government. So having that in mind, we must put extra effort, like my colleagues have said earlier, through the religious leaders to reach their people, to go to the grassroots and say this thing is real, that this problem is real. The moderator, you refer to Ebola. In the case of Ebola, Ebola was more or less localized to Africa, and the advanced country were not so much out for it. Secondly, when Ebola came to Nigeria, thank God that it was nipped at the bud in Lagos. In the case of Ebola, it was just Lagos and I think Rivers State or something. It's not as widespread as we have now. And because of this, people will think that this thing is a ruse, that this is not true. Secondly, there is also false confidence we may have, because when Ebola came, it was attacked and immediately everything was gone. They may think that just like Ebola, it will go again. Yes, it will go again because that's our faith in God, because God can do for us what no man can do. But we must do what God has given us the ability to do. So my advice to people and to us who are leaders, church leaders, mosque leaders, whatever, is to make sure we ourselves, we get the facts and we relay the facts to our people. I've been monitoring this. I go to NTA. See, yesterday, the Minister for Information and some other people, they gathered, they were discussing the facts that were coming out there. How many people can get these facts? Secondly, we also have this problem of power in Nigeria, power failure, that many people cannot even put on their TV and listen. Many people, even in the city, when there is no light or power, they cannot get this information. So it is our duty to make sure we pass this information to our members. And that's what we have been doing. We send text messages, WhatsApp messages, and so on and so forth. But we know that at the end of the day, we will be victorious because there's light at the end of the tunnel if we do what we are supposed to do. And prayer is very, very important. We must not forget God. I thank God for my brother who spoke the other time that we pray as if everything depends on God, and we do what we are supposed to do as if everything depends on us. We should continue to enlighten our people And after Corona, I pray that the government and all other leaders, including churches, including mosques, that we will educate our people more, even in secular knowledge. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Venerable Otoki. Now, let's bring in Sheikh Mohammed one more time. Sheikh Mohammed Nura Khalid. Well, we're still on the role of religious leaders as key influencers in their communities, particularly, if you like now, using the example given by Imam Fuad, fringe communities. I use that very advisedly, so that persons who don't have access, to direct media messages and so on and so forth. How do you think this message can trickle down? I'm sure you watched that video clip from our backgrounder. That video clip was in the social media for several days when people were saying that, look, coronavirus is a ruse, coronavirus, and you could see how they were massing together without respect for social distancing. And they were said to be following a religious leader. And just a few days ago, the Lagos state government had to close down, a place of worship in defiance, that had opened in defiance of the lockdown order. How then can religious leaders be more influential in terms of cascading down the messages and ensuring that their followers adhere to the essence of those messages?
I think religious leaders have to, first of all, re-educate themselves in terms of what is going on in this world. The background you showed, I happened to be an eyewitness to it because I was in Jos during that instance, and I know the effect of that. What I want people to understand is that many religious leaders have no knowledge of what is happening in the world they live in. And they are leading people, therefore, negatively or in the wrong direction. What we're supposed to do is to learn more about the world, because the world is changing, is moving fast. Shift is real in this world. The world is shifting from this direction to another direction, from this direction to another direction. Look at the dimension the world is taking now. From war, physical war, to now health war. Or the economy is changing, whatever is changing. Now, if you don't know what is happening in China, it may come to you as it happened now. It started from China, and it is here in Nigeria. If you don't know how it started in China and how it went somewhere, you will not make the positive impact that you're supposed to do. To have a positive influence by the religious leaders in our society, we need to, first of all, educate ourselves, and the government should do something about that by informing the religious leaders at the earliest stage of anything important, so that they will not send wrong messages or receive wrong information and now pass it to people. Then it will become a problem. So we have a duty as religious leaders to re-educate ourselves on daily basis, know what is going on in the world, know what is going on in our country, and know what is going on in our local community, so that we can correlate it together and pass appropriate information. And we must know that many people don't trust the government anymore. There is mistrust between the people, the masses, and the government. And those that will build a bridge must be the religious leaders. And they are going to do that if the government is listening to them and taking their advices to correct their mistakes. Thank you.
All right. On the issue of religious leaders, Kingsley, it's not just in Nigeria. You recall what happened in South Korea. A religious leader held a religious gathering, and that's, of course, the beginning of the widespread of coronavirus in South Korea. Absolutely. But good enough, he came up to apologize. So when it comes to the issue of trusting government, it's totally different when you're talking about your life, preserving your life, your own life, not the life of government. After all, who is the government? We are all part of government. So on the issue of trusting government should not be there in a health situation. Because, of course, if you find ourselves in a situation where Italy, France, and the rest of them who have a better technology, the know-how, to fight it, of course, it's going to be a very bad news, which we don't pray for. So let me go to Professor Omar Pate this time around on the role of the media in all of this. For me, we have to actually appreciate the governor of Lagos State, because with the index case in Lagos, he started this fight from that moment. He paid a visit to the president of the country a few days after with a master plan he has for Lagos, because perhaps he had a proactive instinct, which he had. Otherwise, Lagos would not be handled the way it's presently handled if he didn't do that. So not believing in Sanwo-Olu on what he did, I mean, it's a misnomer to me as an individual, whether I'm religious or not religious, believing he took an action, a preventive action, which we should all key into. Now, Professor Omar Pate, the role of the media, you talked to us a short while ago about what happened in Kano, where all media houses, radio and television, and of course social media are all singing the song of coronavirus for people to take precautionary measures. In your entire judgment and the entire nation, what role did the media play? Is it negative or positive, especially with respect to social media?
Thank you very much, Korean. I think we need to assess the role of the media from a very positive perspective. Of course, there are limitations, but let's look at, first of all, let me return to what Imam earlier raised, that the impact of the media is falsely rated. Well, he is entitled to his opinion, and I respect his opinion in the sense that I would have wished for him to have said that there are limitations with the impact of the media instead of it being rated. Limitations in the sense that not every part of Nigeria today is covered by Nigerian media signals. Let me give you a very simple example with Kano. Kano has one of the largest population sizes in this country, and if you come into Kano City, we have, I think, up to more than 10 to 15 FM radio stations. But go beyond Kano City, just about 50, 60 kilometers out of Kano City, you may be lucky to catch the signals of any of the FM radio stations. The rest of the towns are on their own. If you are traveling, let's say, from here to Maiduguri, immediately you leave the boundaries of Kano and a little into Jigawa State, you just listen to one or two radio stations in Jigawa, and immediately you leave Jigawa into Yobe. Again, for the large expanse of land, let's say from Jama'are into Potiskum up to near Damaturu, you may not likely get any Nigerian media signals. Again, leave Damaturu and start traveling into Maiduguri town. You may be on your own without any radio signal, because most of these radio stations are on FM meter bands, which can hardly go beyond 100 kilometers. And the story is the same. Go to Taraba, a very large state. The whole of Mambila and other areas do not receive any Nigerian radio signals. So the only alternative we have is for us to listen to the BBC and other international radio stations. And now, with the social media, people now depend on these handsets. And on these handsets, there are all sorts of information in all sorts of languages transmitted to people who are in different groups and who also believe in their own group membership and group ideas. So there is a very huge gap in terms of information dissemination across the Nigerian landmass. If you take the southwest, for example, it may be easier from Ibadan to Lagos, less than just 150 kilometers, and radio signals can easily travel and people can be saturated with information. But the story is not the same in this part of the country. And again, I will also want to go back to the idea raised by Sheikh Noura, that there is a disbelief in our elites in this country. And this has also translated into what we are seeing today. Some people feel it is the disease of the elites. It is the disease of the big men who go to London, who meet in Abuja, and who stay in government houses. But it is not a disease for the poor who are on the streets, who are wallowing and struggling for daily survival. And evidences have a bit shown in Nigeria that the big men are more at risk. But we know that this is not necessarily true. And not only that, again, some people believe it is the disease of the elite nations, not poor countries like some of us who are in Africa. Again, this is also a stereotype that we have to debunk. So these kind of this kind of beliefs, like I've said, are spread on the social media. And many of us believe it. Not only that, if you go to some of these local settings where they do not have access to the TV like we see in the cities, they do not have access even to radio signals. They only listen to BBC, which comes maybe just 10, 15 minutes in a day for them. So how do you want them to get informed? They have to depend on their religious leaders who, perhaps again like Sheikh Noura said, may only be informed about their own areas of specialization without knowing issues of globalization as they are occurring today. Today, knowledge has no boundary. Disease has no boundary. Because of globalization, movement has become so fast and so easy. Likewise, this flow of information. But these people remain in their own provinces. And because they're in their own provinces, their people see what they do, rely on them, and depend on them. So these are some of the gaps that we have to address. That number one, our media infrastructure, despite its availability in our cities, is still restricted in our rural areas. We need to do more for our people to get information. And we cannot do that today or tomorrow. So the only alternative is for us to resort to interpersonal channels of communication, where we can get people from some of these areas. We have all sorts of health officers, get them recruited, get them informed, and then they go back to the villages and the rural areas to get the people informed. The thing is, you cannot give what you don't have. If you are a religious leader, you are only informed about the scriptures without knowledge about other scientific issues relating to global change, climate change, issues of economics, issues of politics. Then it becomes difficult for you to marry them together. Your thinking will now become narrow. So these are the challenges that we are confronting. Therefore, the suggestion is we have to develop faster mechanisms of getting across to our people in almost every setting. We dare not neglect any aspect or any small place that we can think of, because once an individual is caught, only God knows how many other people may be infected.
Right. Professor Maro Pate joining us from our Canon Network Center, and indeed the other guests. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation, and also we'll take a look at the tweets that have come in, quite a number of them.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide, don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
The coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, has been declared by the World Health Organization as a global pandemic. While clinical trials are ongoing for a vaccine and a possible cure, there is no known treatment for the coronavirus. Nigeria has recorded some of these cases, and people are advised to take these preventive measures to keep themselves safe and contain the further spread of the virus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water, or use hand sanitizers all the time. Maintain social distancing. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Practice respiratory hygiene. If you have fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical care early. Do not panic. Stop the spread of unconfirmed news. Follow the official government news outlets and report all cases immediately. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Yeah, Usulon, good morning, Nigeria. And we thank you also for your company. On this occasion, many Nigerians are making their own contributions. Of course, we are talking to Nigerians and they're also responding to the conversation. So, by way of tweets. And we'll begin with Ola. Ola says, my own view, most of these religious leaders are close to the people and can control them to stay at home. I think government should provide funds and food items to help the poor.
Yusuf Guna, it's indeed a difficult moment for the country, but what religious leaders should do is to encourage prayers and also ensure that their respective followers obey the necessary precautions identified by the government.
Dele Jack Solomon says religious congregants are most likely to trust not only their leaders, but those who share their faith, particularly people from their own tradition. One of the best things religious leaders can do at this perilous and uneasy time is partner with those in their congregations who are scientists, physicians, or have other expertise on how viruses spread and how to prevent the spread. This they must do without sentiment, because science is God and religion is science. May God heal our land.
Now, Chimario Mike, the basic duty of any religious leader is prayer, while those who are financially buoyant are supposed to show love at this time by donating money or equipment in support of coronavirus control.
Yes, Adejumo Paul Olubimi says some religious leaders have been a clog in the wheel of progress. They believe they are immune from the COVID-19 virus in the house of God, so they can go ahead to violate safety tips. I advise them to stop tempting God. The virus has no regard for religion nor place of worship. Religious leaders who violate the social gathering ban should be arrested and prosecuted. In Russia, violators risk 7 years jail term. On the streets of Russia, lions were deliberately released to force people indoors. Philippines president promised to send violators to their grave.
Now, Victor Umoru, all the religious leaders should help contribute physically and spiritually.
Olakunle Sharon, true religious leaders, sensitize the followers. Okay, she said, true religious leaders sensitize the followers, affirm the existence of COVID-19, implore the followers of strict adherence to the don'ts and do's by government and the health professionals.
Among Balahon Babs, religious leaders are expected to collaborate with state functionaries to ensure compliance. But sadly, some religious leaders are the ones exposing Nigerians more to the hazards of COVID-19. We have seen churches sealed off. We have also seen mosques also sealed off because the people are recalcitrant.
Okay, Adejumo, we've read your first comment, so let's go to Mike Anyakwo. Mike Anyakwo says religious leaders certainly have great roles to play on this novel COVID-19. Their roles are mainly reassurance to the adherents that the disease is not a death sentence and the need to respect laid down laws to prevent the menace. We must be circumspect to restriction orders, since too much of it is more dangerous than coronavirus itself.
Adejumo Paul, I'd like to take this. It says religious leaders should stop adding salt onto injury by blaming the COVID-19 pandemic on people's sin. This is unfortunate. In this moment, words of encouragement and uplifting the victims is what is expected of them, not condemnation.
All right, Mike, religious leaders certainly have great roles to play on this COVID-19.
You took that.
I took that again, short while ago. Yes, we'll go to Mobola Hababs. Yeah. Yes, religious leaders are expected to collaborate with state functionaries to ensure compliance. But sadly, some leaders are the ones exposing Nigerians more to the danger of COVID-19. We've seen churches sealed. We've also seen mosques sealed because people are recalcitrant. You also read, is this a repeat?
Yeah, let's just skip some of them. First of all, I will take this now, Kiri, and then you take Badamasi. It says, as COVID-19 is spreading panic and fear across the country, religious leaders must find ways to meet the psychological and spiritual needs of their congregants. I think Venerable Oludare Otoke was speaking to this earlier on. It says also religious leaders must use the trust they have built with their congregants to bring home the importance of caution.
Festus Akimbewa, though it's difficult for religious leaders to close their places of worship across Nigeria, truth in mass gathering can accelerate the spread of COVID-19, and religious leaders must support all the measures put in place by governments to curb the spread of the virus.
Lord Alpha C, he said there's nothing religious leaders can do now than advise their members to respect government's redemptive measures to contain the spread. They can as well come to the rescue of certain less privileged members who have been paying their offerings and tithes, as it were.
Benjamin Olutekumbi, he said the only thing the religious leaders can do apart from praying is to support their fellowship members. Let all the wealthy Nigerians supporting the government pick a bank each and help out those with less than 10K in their account using BVN, which I know is possible.
This Chris Simeon says the pandemic is a demon from the pit of hell. So religious clerics ought to intervene for us in prayers. Fervent prayers turn every difficult situation to the better. Reverend Akanji already said, yes, pray, but then you also have personal responsibility.
Usman Banukantu, the religious leaders have the role to enlighten their followers on the dangers of the COVID-19 by citing relevant portions of the scriptures to buy in the cooperation of their followers, acting contrary, which will escalate the spread of the disease.
Steve Bond, holy sites in Mecca and the Vatican have been closed. So why are some religious leaders in Nigeria now behaving holier than thou? They should educate their followers about social distancing.
Uche Gabriel, it's indeed a difficult moment for the country, but what religious leaders should do is to encourage their members to pray for healing of those affected and also make sure that their respective members obey all the necessary precautions.
Well, let's go to the next set of tweets, Kirian. This one is from Ojo Lighton. It says, religious leaders, they need to pray for forgiveness for our sins and give back to the needy and the vulnerable in the various churches and mosques so that stomach viruses will not kill us.
All right, the light says, I think religious leaders should use their influence to help enforce this stay-at-home order. They should try and enlighten their followers on the issue at hand and let them know that this is a critical time and much must be handled without any form of subjectivity.
Cecilia Okoroma, a good religious leader is a good citizen. If our religious leaders don't obey laws, how do they expect their followers to obey such laws? This is the time our religious leaders must preach the truth and good behavior to followers. COVID-19 is no respecter of persons. It's real.
And see what she added in her second entry, that religious leaders know that their followers see them as demigods, and hence they are easily brainwashed and do whatever they hear from them, which is, of course, true in this circumstance. Sani Michael Amakoji. The leaders are primarily to pray for healing and cleansing at this time. However, some of them have gone extra mile to donate money and medical equipment to combat COVID-19 pandemic. Well, kudos to them, as we expect them to join in advocacy in order to defeat the evil today.
Nkechi Fidelia, religious leaders are supposed to sensitize their members on how to stay safe and then should also assist such members with foodstuff during this lockdown.
Ibrahim Tudu, the umbrella organizations CAN and the CIA, that's the CIA, have not been optimal in handling the infractions of their preachers and places of worship. There's no indication, to the best of my knowledge, of leaders of CAN or SCIA calling any preacher for advice on or sounding warning to those of them or those known mosques and churches spewing misinformation. No sanctions, no warnings, and no remorse. What are the religious leaders doing?
All right, this is from Festus Akimboewa. It says the religious leader boasted that he has a corrosive anointing against coronavirus. And while other religious leaders said God is using coronavirus to punish us for our sins, this is irresponsible. Religious leaders must tell their followers to obey the rules to stop them from dying.
And Sani Balarabe, COVID-19 is a drastic disease which requires a drastic measure to suppress it. So the religious institutions have a role to play, and they should do it with all sense of commitment to support government's measure and to ensure proper compliance of their followers to save humanity.
I was just wondering, I mean, a number of matters arising from the tweets, and one of the several topics that we have taken out of coronavirus, it has to do with fear, anxiety, and uncertainty, and panic, amongst the populace. We've brought in psychologists, we've brought in psychiatrists, we've brought in other medical personnel to look at this perspective. I just want to take the guests that we have on Skype before we lose their signals. I'm just wondering, Venerable Udare Otoki, Venerable Otoki, tell us, I've just listed all of this panic, anxiety, the fear of contracting the virus. We have all virtually, some of those who know, have become so overconscious. People are afraid of what will happen to them in terms of their economy, in terms of their jobs, and so on and so forth. What can religious leaders do to help, their followers and adherents overcome this psychological, if not psychiatric state that we have gone into on account of the pandemic?
Thank you very much, sir. At this point, it is clear that people are afraid, people are anxious, people are troubled. In fact, the fear of the coronavirus is even killing some more than the disease itself. But now we must let people know that God is still in control. Coronavirus, or COVID-19, is not the first worldwide plague we will ever have. In the time past, we have been having different plagues, even in the Bible, biblical time. If you look throughout the Bible, there are so many times, but still there are remnants. And when you say remnant, that doesn't mean it's a smaller percentage. At the end of the day, this thing will come to pass. And then the word of God in Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7 is what we have for our people. He said, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your heart and mind through Jesus Christ. We should not be anxious at this time. We should not be troubled. We should do what we are supposed to do. Science, when they give you some result, it's not a death sentence. The result of sciences or medical sciences report, they are prayer points, and for you to do what is needful. As we are praying to God, we should believe in God that it will soon come to pass. And thank God that we are having some good news now. We learned that for the past 3 days or so, China have not confirmed a new case. That is a sign that the thing is going, and eventually it will go. When it goes, God knows how to restore us back. God will restore us. Some people are afraid of their businesses. Some people are afraid of what will happen. Even some families are separated now. And the father, the mother, they are afraid of what will happen to their children. We want to say, let's have faith in God. Even as much as we are doing what we are supposed to do, God will do for us what we cannot do. And in the area of religious leader, people have been talking. I was listening to the comments. The churches, we are already doing something, giving food to our members. It's not just in a church, all the churches giving food to our members. Even some churches also donating to the government to fight this thing. And we know that surely there is victory at the end. So churches, we have been doing that. And then if you will permit me, don't say that the church leaders are narrow in their senses. We are not only religious, we are educated, and we cooperate with others. What we should know is that the 5 arms or the 5 basic institutions of the society should work together at this time, not shifting blame. Somebody talk of the media will work with the religious leader. The economy is also there. The education system is there. But at the end of the day, if we all come together and cooperate, we will defeat this disease. And I see the defeat of this disease in the nearest future in Jesus' name. Thank you, sir.
Yes, we indeed pray for that, and in the nearest future is going to happen. Let's go to Sheikh Mohammed Nora Khalid. Chief, just on the same vein, let's look at the components of this emergency that Kingsley raised, which includes anxiety, fear, panic, and what have you. What's your take on how persons should handle this situation?
Sorry, come again.
We are talking about panic among Nigerians with the advent of coronavirus, and of course the result we are getting from across the globe. People's psychology tend to take a downturn, in terms of having fear, anxiety, uncertainty, and panic. How, as a religious leader, how would you address people on this? What would be your advice to the people that you've been congregating in your mosque? What will be your message to them, and of course the entire Nigerians?
Well, my advice to them is to let them reaffirm their faith. Let them believe that لَنْ يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا. There will be nothing that will befall us except that which was designed by the Almighty on us. And we must agree that we have to, first of all, do the needed things by acquiring knowledge about what is coronavirus and how to protect myself from being infected with coronavirus. And also, we must be prayerful. And when praying, we have to have it in our mind that the way we perceive the Lord is the way He is going to associate with us. If we think that He is going to help us, He will help us. If we think that He is not going to help us, He will not. The most important thing is to agree that this coronavirus of a thing is a test. And the Quran told us in chapter 2, verse 152, that there are some people who are very much perseverance, that when something happens to them, they will say, we are from Allah and we shall return to Him. And by doing so, you have agreed that everything is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, don't panic. Don't think that the end of the world has come, but remember that it is a shift. The world is shifting from one thing to another. And when the coronavirus issue went away, there are going to be some changes in life, and hope that it's going to be better with you. And that is why
Sheikh Mohammed Noura, thank you very much. We just want to come back to the studio so that we can get a closing thoughts very briefly from our other guests. I was just wondering, at the beginning of this program, Kiri and I were talking about the new normal. We are seeing a paradigm shift in so many things. What we thought, those who have armament, they have found that those armaments are useless against this pandemic. But when we go to the scriptures, in terms of mind change, there is the doctrinal acceptance, as we find in the scriptures, that when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, the Lord says, I will be in your midst. Now you are saying, don't congregate, stay in your house and pray. How then do you have this mind shift, as it were, to say that in the face of this pandemic, stay where you are, the Almighty will hear your prayers as you have been exhorting. The Reverend Akanji.
Thank you. Before I go to these 2 or 3, I'm
very briefly. Yes. Bullet points.
Yeah. Well, bullet points. The thing is that I believe there are 2 extremes. There are those who are too afraid, and there are those who are careless. Those 2 extremes must be balanced. Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 says, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Whether being too afraid or being careless will not help us. Please, people should not be too anxious. They should put their trust in God. But people should also not be careless. And so they should be mindful of the times we're in. Concerning 2 or 3 gathering in my name, in fact, that strengthens the stay at home. If just 2 and 3, you and members of your family are at home, you are being promised that God is there with you. You don't have to come to a large congregation. Trust that God is there at home with you to hear you. And there are benefits for the family. Families are more together. Benefits for even religious people. We are facing a common enemy now. We are one. So there are points, benefits.
Sure, there. And even to add to that, biblically speaking too, God made provision for people who play in their closet, right? He said, look, if you pray, wherever you pray, God will hear your prayers. And let's get the Quranic version of this from Abayami.
Yes, when things are like this happening, Quran says, that those, when people, that's Quran chapter 3, that so people, when they tell you that some people are gathering there to destroy you, to demolish you, say, don't worry, we will rely on Allah, we'll do what we are supposed to do, and tell them that we will rely on Allah without minding our own responsibility. And I also said that when you have a challenge, say, he says you should worship the owner of this house. And when you worship him, who is this owner? Is the one that when you are hungry, he has always been there for you. And when you are in crisis, when you are afraid, he's always the one that will remove the fear from you.
Okay, all right. I mean, you can see a number of points keep germinating, but we can't possibly exhaust all of this. I was just wondering, Professor Umaru Pate, this is a religious question I want to ask you, but it also relates to education. Now, but it's an education and more particularly communication. Sheikh Mohammed talked about what key influencers need to do, that they need to be self-educated. But here we are, some religious leaders are more focused on life in the hereafter, rather than life, here and now. How is it then possible to get their reorientation to focus on everyday things that could virtually wipe out whole populations?
That was what we said at the beginning, that we need enhanced knowledge about contemporary realities as well as evolving issues in the society, apart from our own area of provinces and specialization. And I pray our religious leaders will do just that. This is the period that we need to exercise leadership, demonstrate leadership in every aspect of our lives. And likely, we need to commend the religious leaders so far. They have been doing quite well, despite all the infractions that we have had. People have respect for them. Their credibility rating is very, very high among their followers. So what we need is for them to demonstrate further leadership, and this is also the period of collaboration. We have to collaborate with other people who have information, who have knowledge in other aspects, and then we also need the support of everyone. Let us also not just keep on de-emphasizing about people going to hell or about sins. Let's leave that to God, and let's see how we can encourage and create hope in our people for them to collectively face the challenge that we have as of today.
Well, of course, I would like to appreciate your comment. We have to cut short there because time is not on our side. And of course, it's like everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And but focusing on the life thereafter, you have to live your life here first before that. Gentlemen, it's been nice having all of you on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. First of all, we'd like to appreciate Sheikh Mohammed Nura Khalid, Chief Imam Apo Quarters, Jumat Mosque. He reached us via Skype. Well, thank you for your contribution. And of course, Venerable Oludere Otoki, the Vicar Basilica of Grace Gudu, Apo here in Abuja. It's also a pleasure having you this morning on our show. Professor Omar Pate, is a professor of mass communication and Dean, Postgraduate School, Bayero University, Kano. It's been indeed a pleasure hosting you this morning. And of course, we have to appreciate Reverend Israel Akonji, Chairman, Christian Association of Nigeria, North Central Zone, and Senior Pastor of First Baptist Church, Area 11. We thank you for coming. Thank you. And Imam Faoud Ademi, National Chief Imam of Al-Habibiyya Islamic Society. It's been wonderful talking to you on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you so much.
All right, so that does it for us, not just today, but indeed for the week on Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you for tuning in. The program returns same time on Monday. That will be at 7 o'clock in the morning. But of course, if you are in Lagos, Ogun, and the Federal Capital Territory, And in such other states where there is a lockdown, remember the lockdown affects Saturday and Sunday. Stay safe and all the very best. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kirian Umaya. We'll see you again on Monday.